So, when we learn the sugya of Pekuach Nefesh, which is what we're learning, so then, the first thing that comes to mind is the Gemara Megillah Tezayin, where the Gemara says, that however great it is to save a yid, to save a neshama, to save a human being, and it's one of the greatest things in the world, right? The Chazal tell us, you save one neshama, you're saving all future dairas. But Afal Pikin, the Gemara says very clearly, Yosa Talmud Torah, Yosa Me'atzalas Nefashos. So however great it is to save people's lives, and of course if the situation comes up which it shouldn't, then Avada, that's what you have to do. But just know that sitting in the Beis Medrash, sitting in a home, sitting with a sefer, way overshadows that. That's number one. But really I wanted to discuss one small nakuda, and that is the nakuda of Megillas Rus. Because we're all familiar with the Megillas. More of us are probably familiar with Megillas Esther for sure. Maybe even Shir Hashirim per Efsha, Rus a little bit less. But one thing we know, every Yontov we read the Megillah of that's got shaykhs to that Yontov. In other words, when we're reading the Megillah of Megillas Esther, you don't have to ask a kasha. That's the whole story. That's Purim. That's everything, right? Even when Shir Hashirim, you understand why. When it comes to Shevuos and you're reading Megillas Rus, and you're thinking, what's the pshat? What's really the connection? Why are we reading Megillas Rus over here? It doesn't seem to fit in any connection to the Yontov of Shevuos. So we have the obvious answer that everyone knows, which is the Ramah. The Ramah in Rechaim Tov Tzadi brings down V'noigin loimer Rus b'Shvuos, and the reason is, if you look at the Shari Tshuva, Tov Tzadi Dalet Sikot base, the Shari Tshuva brings Bishum Shedavid HaMelech Olav Hashon Meis B'Bad Seres. We know that the Yotzar of David HaMelech is on Shevuos. Many people have the minhag to say Tilim because of that. Many other reasons also. V'Hakadosh Baruch Hu Mamalish Noseim Shel Tzadikim Miyom Liyom B'Bad Bad Seres Noilad. He was obviously born on Shevuos as well, because that's how it works with Tzadikim. Megillas Rus Nichtav Al Yachas David HaMelech. Okay. So that's the Shari Tshuva. That's the answer we're all familiar with. We read Rus on Shevuos because it has a connection to David HaMelech, and since Rus was the great-great-grandmother, Memela, David HaMelech's Yotzai, also because of that, Gavaldik. It doesn't really seem to be sufficient. That's the reason why we read it. Come on, there's no connection to the actual story. There's no connection to what we're actually hearing about when, again, for those that are listening and those that are actually up and hearing what's going on. What's the purpose? What's the connection in that case? And you could go even further than that. What's it even doing part of the Torah? It's part of Tanakh. Why is it part of Tanakh? If you look at every other chelik of Tanakh, it's talking about our Gedolim, our Manhigim, our Malachim, our kings. That's what Nach is, generally speaking. Here we have something miyuchad about Rus, was a regular, normal, but a regular, normal person. Why? Why specifically do we have an entire Megillah, a biography basically we're reading, about a person who's a regular person, did amazing things, I'm not taking it away, but why on Shevuos, and why do you have a whole Megillah for that? So we know that every Yontov has its specific mitzvah. Every Yontov carries within it its mitzvah, whether it's Pesach, we've got Matzah, Chometz, when it's even the Durabonans we've got, right, Chanukah, Purim, V'chole. We always have mitzvahs that correspond to the Yontov. Here when it comes to Shevuos, there's no mitzvah. There's no specific mitzvah. And everybody asked the kasha. Baron asked it, many asked the kasha. Where is the mitzvah? And the answer is there doesn't need to be a mitzvah. Because what are we doing on Shevuos? Something different to every other time. We're not trying to relive Yetzias Mitzrayim, and therefore we have to dafka eat matzah, be'ez seiba, v'chole v'chole. That's not the point. We're commemorating Ma'amid Har Sinai, which is one of the greatest things that ever happened in the history of Kollel Yisrael. You go through Chazal, what they say about Ma'amid Har Sinai. It's unbelievable what happened over there. I spoke about it this morning to the boys. We mentioned some of the Ma'amid Chazal of what went on by Ma'amid Har Sinai. It's noira what happened. It's amazing. And you think to yourself, why did it all happen? But Al Kaponim, we can't relive the experience. What do you want us to do? I did take the boys to Egypt a few years ago, and we did go up Har Sinai. Yes, we took camels, 3-hour camel ride up what's known to be, no guarantee, it's known to be Har Sinai, although there are some shitas that hold it in Saudi Arabia, and Mitzvah, we hope to get there one day to be into other shitas. But Devar, we just did Egypt, and we took a 3-hour camel up what's known to be traditionally Har Sinai. hundreds and hundreds of people from around the world doing the same thing, by the way. We weren't alone. And then we took a walk up at Davenate to the top of Har Sinai. Zero Kedusha, by the way, I told the boys. Much more Kedusha in a Beis Knesset where you're sitting and learning whatever you're learning than there is at the top of Har Sinai. But that's irrelevant, right? So what do you want us to do? We should every Yom Tov take a trip to a mountain and just sit there and like commemorate what's going on. There's no real way to commemorate. That's really not what we're doing. That's not the purpose. We're not trying to relive the experience like the Baditchev and Kedushas Levi brings in Parshas Yisro. That it happens every single year. It's not that it happened. Right? The Zohar Kodesh brings it also. The Zohar Kodesh says when a Yid sits down and learns Torah, he's being mekabel the Torah Har Sinai right now. So it's something that's happening every single day. Right? That's what we say by Birchas HaTorah. It's now. It's in the present. It's not something that happened and we're trying to commemorate that. We're not trying to commemorate anything. We're trying to live it. And the only way to live it is by sitting and learning Torah. And therefore we can't sit and commemorate what happened by going to a place in a physical manner and reliving the experience. The only way is to sit and to be mekabel the Torah by learning the Torah. Shevuos is the day that we have the opportunity to decide how close we are to the Torah. How much the Torah means to our lives, how much it means to ourselves on a daily basis, and how much we're willing to give up for a life of Kedusha, for a life of Torah. Chazal tell us, Gemara in Shabbos, Pei Gimel Amar Beis, Omer Rish Lakish, Ein divrei Torah miskayim ele b'misha meimis atzmo yaleh. As the Pasuk says in Bamidbar Yetez Zois HaTorah Odom Kiyomus Ba'oil. That means that the Torah is only given, only resides, only connects to a person that's willing to give up for it, that's willing to be moiser nefesh for it, that's willing to go beyond what he thinks his natural ability is and do much more. Now, if you think, when it comes to Shevuos, that your acceptance of the Torah and everything that goes together with that is perfect, then I guess there's nothing for you to do on Shevuos except maybe eat cheesecake or whatever else that you need to do, because you've accepted the Torah and you're good with it. But if you recognize that there's something missing, and perhaps you could do more, and maybe you could give up a little bit more, maybe you could fight a little bit more, maybe you could do whatever it is that you're doing, but just push a little bit more. Go beyond what you think you're able to do, whether it's waking up at a different time, whether it's sleeping a bit less, whether it's not schmoozing so much during Seder, maybe it's diktuk mitzvahs, whatever it may be, kol echad lefi madregosei, leiv yadei moras nafshe, everybody knows themselves. Then at the end of the day, Shevuos is the greatest yontiv, because it's the yontiv that you have the opportunity to do what Klal Yisrael did then, that we had the opportunity, which is to re-mekabel the Torah on our own personal level, and to teach us how to do that, and to teach us how it's important to do that. Tanakh dedicates an entire volume, a whole Megillah, on a story of one person that did exactly that. That's exactly what she did. Yes, it's true, it's not a leader of Klal Yisrael, it wasn't a king either. It was an ordinary person like you and me that took a leap, that jumped, and went beyond what she thought she could do in a natural way and what needed to be done. And therefore Megillas Shevuos is our guide to a regular person who was mekabel the Torah, who was mekabel the Olav Torah, who was mekabel everything that goes together with Torah. We're all familiar with the famous shaila about what a person should be busy with on Leil Shevuos, and I'm not going into it now. Everyone should be busy and ask their own personal shailas about should they do the tikkun, should they learn Baba Kama, whatever it is that you do gavaldik. I'm not going into it, but we're all familiar with the different shittism and hogim in Klal Yisrael, and we're also familiar with the machlokes between the Vilna Gaon and the Dubna Maggid famously about this. Right? Everybody knows the mashal. I'll just say it quickly because I don't want to spend too much time on that. Should one do tikkun or should one learn whatever he's learning, whatever he enjoys, right? That's the shaila. So the Vilna Gaon was approached by the Dubna Maggid to say what's going on. And when the Vilna Gaon was doing the tikkun and the Dubna Maggid was learning. So what happened? So the Vilna Gaon explained, Dubna Maggid, whatever, they explained the Maisa as follows. That if you're selling material, so when you come to the marketplace, you don't come with all of your material, you come with a sample. Come with a sample, but imagine if you don't have anything in the warehouse in stock. So what happens is the guy says, I'd like to order, 200 meters of that beautiful fabric. You're like, okay, I'll give you that piece, but I don't have anything else. Well, you show what's going on. This means you have something in the warehouse, in the storage, that you can give me if you're not giving it to me. So why are you selling it over here? Why are you showing that you have a sample? So the Maggid said, listen, Vilna Gaon, you have all the samples, you have everything in the warehouse, you've got Kollel Torah Kulas. So for you can say the samples. But for us simple people, we have to just learn because that's what we need. So I'm not going into what you should and what you should not do. There's one addition to that story, which I only heard recently. Could be the Olam knows it already, but I only heard it simply. Rav Shlomo Pincus brings it down to the Sefer, and he said that, by the way, the Vilna Gaon answered back. And the Vilna Gaon answered back and saying, you're right, but tonight is not about what we know, it's about showing Hashem what we want. And therefore, the Yontiv of Shevuos is to show the Rabbeinu Shalom what we want. And Chazal are giving us a very important reason. And by the way, the Shulchan Aruch Harav, the Baal HaTanya, brings it in Hilchos Shevuos, Tov Tzadid Aleph Sif Yud Gimel. He brings from the Yalkut Shimoni in Rus. And he says this reason that we read Rus on Shevuos is because of this. Noigen Likvus Megillas Rus, the Baal HaTanya. B'Shvuos shu zman matan Torah kidei lilmod shaloi nitna Torah el alidei yisurim ve'ino k'moshe the Rus k'shgaira. Just like Rus had to give up, she had to be moise nefesh. She had to push beyond. That's what the Torah is telling us. That's what the Yontiv of Shevuos is. That's what Megillas Rus is, and that's why we read it on Shevuos, to give us that reminder that we have to push more. And every single person, kol echad lefi madrigosai, can also push more. As we said from Chazal, if you think for a minute that you'll be able to get connected to Torah when it's perfect, when everything is exactly the way you need it, you feel great, you've had enough sleep, you've got no headache, you've got no up and coming appointments, your wife's happy, she sends you out in the morning with a little bit of bag of something that she made you for Kollel, and she says, thank you so much for going to Kollel, I can't wait for you to come back. And the air conditioning, the base measures is perfect. And there's even cups and spoons and coffee and hot water. Everything is perfect the way, and the Chavrus is here and he's on time and everything is amazing. That's when I'll learn. No, that's not Torah. That's not Kabbalah Torah. That's not Mesiras Nefesh for Torah. Mesiras Nefesh for Torah means when it's difficult, when it's not easy, when you got a headache, when you didn't sleep, and the baby kept you up last night, half the night, and you got a doctor's appointment that you're rushing for and you're not sure if he's going to get there on time or if we're going to wait 3 hours. After you left the house this morning and your wife was in a bad mood and she sent you off and you slammed the door. All of these things. You come into Kollel, it doesn't get any better, Chavus didn't show up, the air conditioning pink today is not working, it's boiling hot outside. What do you want from me? And the answer is, you know what? We want you to sit and learn. That's what we want. The Torah wants you to continue. The Torah wants you to push ahead. Because every single person has the ability to do that. And we all think we're so restricted within ourselves, I can't do more than that. That's not true. That's not true. It's simply not true. Look around at people that became Gedolim, that became our Manhigei Ador. These people had to push. These people had to push. I'll give you one example. I don't know if you're familiar with the Aderes. The Aderes, one of the biggest Rabbanim here in Yerushalayim years ago, a goyin at tzaddik, yisoid olam, mamish, Kollel Torah Kulei, back to front, unbelievable. So, when he was a young boy, 5 years old, his mother passed away. And he wasn't much older when his father remarried. Now his stepmother was a nice woman, but at the end of the day, it wasn't his mother, it wasn't a replacement for his mother. And she definitely didn't love him as his mother had done. She also had their own children as well, which obviously she loved more than him. So in 1861, he became engaged, the Aderes, to the daughter of one of the Rashivas of Ponovich, and he got married. It wasn't easy. His life was full of tragedy after tragedy. The oldest daughter died just a few years later, and the next daughter was born in the middle of Shiva. She also died as a small baby, and the suffering was unimaginable. He's just newly married. He had lost his mother at the age of 5. His father remarried, and his stepmother definitely didn't love him. He was stuck in a terrible situation. It caused him heart problems. His heart was growing weak. It was difficult. He had problem breathing at that stage. Most people would have been broken at that time. But what he did was, and he writes it very clearly himself in the Hakdamas of his firm, he hid under the blanket of Torah. He hid under the blanket of Torah that was his lifeblood, his Torah's Chaim. It was his life. So much so that he was only focused on Torah. They say that Rav Shach wrote certain chalakim of his Sfarim after Nebuch he lost a child, and he was in tremendous pain. And he writes that you should excuse me for writing this, when my daughter was unfortunately sick and when she was taken from this world, but it was the only way that I had a shaykhus to Yiddishkeit. It's the only way that I could actually continue in my life was for the chiyas of Torah. So 3 years later, to continue the story of Daderes, his third daughter was born. 5 weeks later, she unfortunately left this world. 3 children, Rabbi say. Tragedy after tragedy. He had to go to specialists and doctors to try and figure out what's he going to do with his heart. His heart was getting weaker and weaker. But he said clearly, the only thing that kept him going was limud Torah, was steiging in Torah. And he felt it clearly. He did have other children who, Baruch Hashem, made it. In 1872, the Aderes did survive the illnesses and the plagues that were going around at the time. But his oldest son, Binyamin, unfortunately died. And his second son got an infection on his leg on Simchas Torah. And 8 years later it spread to his brain. Who could withstand so much? How's it shaykh? And by the way, it wasn't just with children. He had no money. He barely had a place to live. But Rabbi said he wrote his first sefer when he was 12 years old. When he left this world, he had written over 100 Sfarim. Now you think for a minute, and this is a little bit of a sad story, so I'm sorry for bringing it up, but I'm bringing it for one reason only. Because at the end of the day, this was a Yid that went through unimaginable pain and tragedy. But you know what he did? He took everything he had and he focused on the Torah. It shows us, Baruch Hashem, we don't have these nisyonos and no one should ever know about them. They're terrible gefährliche things. But what we do have, we have our own little challenges. Everyone has their own little hardships, their own little humps in the road of life. The power of Torah is great, but only if we're moiser nefesh for it. Only if we push beyond. And you know something, you have to push when it's easy. Don't push when it's hard. I was very close, still am, but not as much unfortunately because I don't know the time. But I was very close to Rabbi Zul Obach, Shlita. And he told me once a story about his brother Reb Shmuel, one of the Gedolei Ador here in Eretz Yisrael, Reb Shmuel Obach, son of Reb Shlomo Zalman. And he told me that, we all know, Kiyadua, that Reb Shmuel didn't have any kids. It was very difficult, he didn't have any children. But he would go to Talmidim's chasanas and he would sit there for hours. And he would sit and learn on the side. And they said, Rebbe, it's so nice that you stay. Normally Gedolim, they walk in, they dance a few minutes, they walk out, that's a god. What do you, don't expect anything more than that, that's just fine. It's unbelievable that they came, wow. But he stayed for hours and hours and he's sitting, learning on the side. How do you concentrate? It's so loud, the music, the banging, and he said, I trained myself. What did I do? In my house, I don't have any children, he said, so it's very easy to have peace and quiet and tranquility, and I can learn, fine. I went out to the street. In the street, there are cars every so often, there's bird chirping. I trained myself how to concentrate even over there. And then I went to a more busy street, where there were more cars, and I trained myself then. Eventually I got to the stage that when I'm at a chasna, it's as if I'm in my private study in my house, it doesn't make a difference to me. It makes no difference. I can learn the same intensity. So I just, I make the chassan feel good by staying for a bit longer because I can learn the same way anyway. So Rabbi Zul Obach told me this ma'aseh about his brother. I took from that ma'aseh Gavaldik Limud. Shows us in life, this applies to Emunah B'tocha and it applies to a million things. In life we have to sort of train ourselves to do things when it's easy. So that when it becomes more difficult, we're already there. So hopefully now we're in a stage of life where things are a little bit easy. Baruch Hashem, Kollel, Chaverim, Chavusas, Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim, Eretz Kodesh, what could be better? There's not always necessarily, hopefully, Be'ez Hashem, I give you a bracha, you should all be zocheh to stay here for many years and keep steiging b'siyata d'shmaya. However, sometimes the time comes, the Rebbeinu Shalom calls a person to a different place. You have to go somewhere else, to shine your light of your neshama somewhere else. Gavaldik. But it gets, there are distractions, there are all sorts of things that come up. Try to do it now. Try to be moiser nefesh now. Try to push now. That's the Yontiv of Shevuos. That's Megillas Shevuos. And that's really what we're trying to aim at by listening to Megillas Shevuos. And one last Nekuda Rabbi says as well. This applies more to your wife than it does to you. Because at the end of the day, she's moiser nefesh. I don't know everyone's situations and everyone's whatever it may be. But I can tell you there's no question that your wife is moiser nefesh, often more than you are. You have a geschmack, you have limud Torah, you're sitting and learning, you come back after a Seder, you had a full Seder, you sit in Shtay, you're halacha, you're handling shailas, it's beautiful. What's she been doing? Okay, maybe she works, maybe she's at home, whatever she does. She doesn't have the fulfillment that you have. It's much, much easier for you to be here than her. No shaila whatsoever. When we took the boys last year to South Africa, so one of the Chosh Yidden that we visited and we spent a lot of time was a Yid called Rabbi Mofson. You do the Yid in South Africa and Johannesburg. He's an unbelievable Yid. He's makar of hundreds, if not thousands of Yidden in South Africa, an unbelievable Yid, a beautiful big neshama. So when I met him for the first time, I've been Baruch Hashem to South Africa quite a few times. So when I met him for the first time, so I said, I told his wife, and I said, wow, unbelievable, Moshe Nefesh, you guys are unbelievable for neshamas. So she says, I get the schar, he doesn't get schar, pointing to her husband. I said, really? She said, yeah, my husband loves it. He loves it, so for him it's easy. Me, it's difficult, it's not so easy. She does an amazing job, don't get me wrong, but it's more difficult for your wife to be Moshe Nefesh, to live here, to stay here, to send you to Kollel to learn. It's tremendous Mesiras Nefesh. You need to express it to her before Shevuos, because she is why you are here. I was in the car in Bnei Brak a few days ago, and I met an Einik of Reb Chaim Kanievsky Zatzal, and their grandson Reb Chaim told me the following Maisa. He says to me like this. He said to me that Reb Chaim and a minik, he always learned at home. Everyone knows Reb Chaim learned at home. You never saw Reb Chaim learning anywhere else, right? Once a year, I don't know exactly when he stopped to do this. At one point he obviously stopped, but for many, 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 many years, Reb Chaim once a year would learn in the shul next door, led him in the shul, Shevuos by night. He was there the whole night and he would learn, and he wanted to learn dafka in the shul over there. So he would say goodbye to his wife and he would ask her for a bracha. Before he went, he said, can I have a bracha that I should be matzliach in my learning all night Shevuos night? And she gave him a bracha. This grandson told me a Maisa Shahaya. Reb Chaim was much older when this happened. He went to the shul, Shevuos by night, finished the meal, went to shul, and he realized, I forgot to get a bracha for my wife. He was old, it wasn't easy for him. He left the Beis Medrash. Again, Talmud Torah to Reb Chaim, we don't have to talk about it, right? Every moment, every second. He left, he went back to the apartment and said to his wife, I forgot to ask you for a bracha. I need my bracha for Kabbalah Satayah. So not only was he machshav his wife, al-stam, the Shana Bayis that he had was unbelievable, but more than that, he understood where everything came from. You have to recognize, express it. If you could buy something for moedik, whatever, but at least express it. When you want to write something down, express your Akaras HaToiv, that she allows you to be Moshe Nefesh, to come here. It's often more Mesiras Nefesh for her than it is for you, and we should all be Zoicha Be'ezah Hashem through the Gavaldige Yontav to be Mekabel the Torah with the Gavaldige Ava Rabbah, that we have an opportunity once a year, the Ava Rabbah Shevuos morning, Rabbi Yisai, chap every single word, every syllable, every moment of the Ava Rabbah on Shevuos morning, and ask the Rabbeinu Shalom, we want to be Moshe Nefesh, we want to be connected, we want to have a Shaykhas, and through that, as the Tanya says clearly in Perek Lamed, how important it is for a person to have a Shaykhas to Torah, because when you have a Shaykhas to Torah, it gives you a life of Yiras Shamayim, it gives you a life of Kedusha, it gives you a life of Simchas HaChaim, which Be'ez Hashem we should all feel in our own lives. I want to wish everyone a wonderful Yontav.